Now I'm going to talk to you about the poem that Horace wrote about the fall of Cleopatra. This is state propaganda against Cleopatra. It is pro-Augustus, and the poet is careful not to spite Mark Antony simply because he's a Roman. Now is the time for drinking, O my friends. Now with the free foot beating the earth in dance, deck the couches of the gods with salient feasts before this day. It would have been wrong to bring forth our Cuban wine from the cellars of our ancestors while a demented queen was plotting to destroy the capital and lay waste the empire with her contaminated crew of followers, polluted by disease, she weak enough to hope for anything and drunk with the delights of her hitherto good fortune, but her frenzy diminished when but a single galley escaped the flames and Caesar sobered her mind, maddened by neurotic wine to the fears of harsh reality, pursuing her in his galleys as she fled from Italy. As the hawk pursues the gentle dove, or the swift hunter the hare on the plains of snowy Thessaly to clap into chains the ill-fated monster, but she, seeking a more noble death, did not like a woman dread the sword, or search in her swift ship for some secret hiding place along the shore. She even dared with countenance serene to behold her palace plunged in affliction, and she was bold enough to take into her hands the irritated asps that she might absorb the deadly venom into her body. So in premeditated death fiercer yet she became, scorning to be led off in triumph on hostile Liburnian ships, she no longer a queen, but a woman, unyielding, unhumbled. Despite state propaganda, Horace cannot but admire Cleopatra's spirit. She was the last of the Ptolemies to reign in Egypt, and even though Octavian promised to spare her life, she refused to follow in the triumph behind his chariot, and she prepared a voluntary death. And well, the Romans had to admire that in a woman. Well, this is the second part of this brief speech on Cleopatra. Cleopatra was an overall evil person. Her wickedness was evenly matched with Mark Antony, Marcus Antonius. Let us recall that Mark Antony, when he was praetor, when Mark Antony was praetor, he massacred 800 people in the Forum in Rome. So that's the sort of person. And when Mark Antony, when he was besieging Frata, a city in Parthia, he executed a great number of his men. We don't know how many. Cleopatra is a person who executed her friend Seleucus, the governor of Pelusium, the fort. King of Media. Many nobles were executed by her, betrayed. Her sister was betrayed, her two brothers were betrayed and executed by her. And let's not forget that her father actually killed her elder sister, Berenike. So that's the sort of degenerate family that Cleopatra came from. They were mixed. Brother married brother, cousin married cousin. They were homosexual, they killed each other, so Mark Antony was equally mixed. Rome was shocked by what Mark Antony was doing, how evil he was, and so Maecenas, he was hired by Octavian to hire in his stead poets like Virgil, Horace, and others to actually explain how evil Cleopatra was. But the thing was, they were ordered to focus on Cleopatra and not Mark Antony. Now, Mark Antony may have been worse than Cleopatra, but Mark Antony nevertheless was a Roman, and as a Roman, they had to cover for his crimes. And so they focused on how evil Cleopatra was, how murderous she was. So that's part of Virgil's propaganda, that's part of Horace's propaganda, and other poets, Gadilos, and other poets, especially hired by Maecenas, and Maecenas hired by Octavian. That's part of the propaganda. And part of that propaganda took place in 33, 32, the years preceding the Battle of Actium. And let's not forget that in the Battle of Actium, it was actually Cleopatra who betrayed. It was Cleopatra who insisted that there be a naval battle, not a land battle. Now, in the land battle, Mark Antony may have won, actually. He may have won because he had all these client kings, including Herod, the king of Judea, Samaria, on his side. And it was Cleopatra who insisted that a naval battle take place, and it was she who withdrew with her royal squadron of Egyptian ships, and Antony followed suit. Mark Antony followed suit quickly, which meant that the battle was lost. Now the Romans fought for Mark Antony. They didn't fight for glory, they fought for Mark Antony. Now when Mark Antony left, and he fled back to Rome. Now in Rome, let's not forget that Cleopatra betrayed forts like Praetorium. She ordered the crews in Alexandria itself to surrender to Octavian. So everything was lost. And let's not forget that Cleopatra did not die for Mark Antony. Cleopatra tried to make Octavian her lover. And in that case, Cleopatra failed to do her bit, because Octavian was a clever man. He was not corrupt, and he was not a corrupt sex maniac like Mark Antony was, and he did not fall for the trap. So Cleopatra, who was a small person actually, she was quite small in size, she decided to commit suicide because she would lose her glory when Octavian would drag her behind her chariot, and there was a risk that she may have been killed. So she killed herself, and then she lay beside Mark Antony, and not before. She did not die for Mark Antony. She didn't really care about Mark Antony. Cleopatra actually used Mark Antony as a tool to become the world ruler, and it was and Maecenas knew that. Mark Antony did not know that. Maecenas knew that. Virgil knew that. Horace knew that. Catullus was well informed about that, and so they played on that part, and they played on Roman propaganda. The Romans are a noble race. They are a noble race, and when we're talking about Aeneas, when we're talking about Virgil's Aeneas, we're talking about a noble race, a noble person who came from Troy, and he founded Rome, and he had all these values, and not the degenerate Cleopatra with her poison and her perfumes and her poisoned mind and her absolute behaviour. So we see what we're getting at here. Propaganda in the years 32, 33. It was shortly after Octavian defeated a bunch of Illyrian bandits that this state propaganda took place. And Virgil was actually the man. He was the man with the Aeneid. Try to read the Aeneid. And so we see it's a battle between the West and the East. Now the East is evil, corrupt, lazy, and the West meaning Rome actually, Italy, and not the Gauls, the Germans, and the Spaniards. Italy in particular is noble. It's noble like Aeneas. It's noble like Romulus and Romulus. It's not corrupt like Cleopatra, and it's similar to what Herodotus did in his book when he compares the good Greek West and the evil, corrupt Persian East.